Hey there, this is Beth, your sweet urban living lady, and I want to welcome you back to another podcast and to welcome back a guest that we've had before on the Healer's Journey. This is going to be a little bit different because Nitza has already shared her journey with us on the episode where we talk about faith meets frequency, healing by God's design. The little thumbnail says creation holds the key. So if you want this journey, if you want the story, please go back and watch that episode. But I just want to welcome back to the podcast, Nitza Moshe. Nitza, welcome back again. I'm so glad you're here.
Sure. Thank you. I'm real happy to be back. Thank you.
Good. So when we were talking in our last episode, I think the two of us could probably talk all day long and not run out of things to say. But one of the things, and we used, like I said, in the thumbnail, so that's what the picture that people see that catches their attention is creation holds the key. And I'd like for us to just kind of pick up from there and you to share a little bit more about your background, what you do, what you've learned about creation holding the key to our healing. And, I just want to make sure that everybody understands up front from the beginning, we both believe that by the stripes of Jesus, we are healed. We both believe in the finished work of the cross and what Jesus did for us on the cross. We both believe that he is the way, the truth, and the life, and the only way to salvation. So that is one of those things where I believe, sometimes when we start talking about using frequencies or things like that for healing, it sounds like we're dismissing what God has done for us.
Amen.
But you have studied the scriptures, especially Genesis, and done a deep dive showing that everything that we have needed is there from the very beginning. Am I getting that right?
Yes. That's because in the first sentence, Elohim, Aleph Tav, created the heavens and earth. And, you have to do a little bit of gymnastics if you're a modern day Western Christian. But if you were reading that in the old times, or if you were walking through the New Testament, when Yeshua said, I'm the Alpha Omega, which I really think he said I'm the Aleph and Tav, they would have known. When he said I am the light, I am the light, they would know and understand in culture and language that he is saying who he is and was and will be in Genesis 1 through 5.
Okay.
So, and then you have to do this. This may be new to some people it's not. But if you go throughout Scripture and do a study just on Elohim, in the pictograph language, it's the strong, mighty one moving forward. Well, we're called Elohim. People are called Elohims. There is the Council of Elohims. If you get into Michael Heiser's work, it's another word of saying God.
Yeah.
And of course, when we say it, we're always referring to the capital E, the capital, the God above all gods, Elohim, the Most High. The reason he's the Most High and the highest and the God above all gods and the King of all kings is because he is the creator and originator of everything, and nothing compares to him.
Right.
But when we understand, a lot of things we argue and disagree about is we don't understand definition and we don't understand context or culture. But Genesis 1 says Elohim. In other words, think of it this way: the God, Aleph Tav, created all things.
So
and that doesn't get translated.
Okay, so I was going to ask you that because you keep saying Aleph Tav, but there's no Aleph Tav when I read King James or other English translations.
You have to read it in the Hebrew.
Okay.
And that's another thing. People can get their Strongs. I mean, I learned this about 25, 30 years ago. Most believers never pull out a Strongs. Of course, now today it's digital. But back in those days, I used to write my cross references by hand. It took hours and hours and hours. That now I can, sometimes days, because I deep dive into a word from Genesis to Revelations to define it. And so now I can digitize and bring up eSword and go, oh, wow, that's all the places,
Right.
And you need to know, just because the word is like wind, right? Guess what? You got to know what that Hebrew word is.
Right.
So it could be translated as aroma, smell, spirit, wind, breath. So that's another thing. So most people don't ever get even to that. And then when they do, they get to the Strongs, and then they depend on the Strongs, but they don't realize there's mistakes in the Strongs.
Oh,
and,
no.
And the Strongs doesn't show you the prefix or the endings in the word. Like if you looked up moon or month, it's not going to say in or towards or from that moon. It's going to only give you that root of that. So then you go, oh, wow, I can't just depend on the Strongs either. I need to go to the original language. So when I go to look to read Genesis 1 per se, I'm going to go, well, I'm going to read it in Hebrew. And, you don't have to necessarily read Hebrew, because if you get it with the Strongs, get the Hebrew Old Testament with the Strongs, right? And you'll even see that the order of the way the words are different and changed. But if you read it in Hebrew, and then, of course, I like to go deeper into the pictograph language. It's there. In the beginning, Elohim, Aleph Tav, created the heavens and the earth. So there's a lot of precept information that we kind of need to build before you get to this place of seeing the depth. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something simple, like when you see certain things, it's like, well, to a simple, and I don't mean it in a bad way. Simple is actually wonderful and innocent and great.
Yeah.
And I wish life was more simple. But, looking at something versus someone who looks at the same thing with an expertise or a skill of really seeing and knowing what is there, they discern more because they understand more.
Right.
That's a huge difference. So anyway, so then you can get into hours of study of what is Aleph Tav. Aleph Tav to me is everything. When we say Yeshua, Jesus is enough, it's the same as saying Aleph Tav is enough. Because the power, we got to remember too, Scripture, I think in Christianity and the Hebrew roots movement, we really personify our Creator to be a human. And we forget that he says, I am spirit. And where are you going to build a temple for me? How are you going to contain, what can you offer me, right? And that's kind of really hard to wrap our minds around. It's like, wait a minute, who or what is this creator? He's not just a Jesus, he's not just Yahweh with his power over the temple and, and doing all these wonderful things in the presence of Israel. He's so much more than that.
Right.
And I mean, even, you start getting into the deep things of how did that energy, that Godhead, and of course, that's a whole nother argument, become or manifest himself as Yeshua, Jesus, right? So there's all these precepts. And for me, I think, well, first of all, I think I'll just bring this into my background was in telecommunications in the 70s.
Okay.
And knowing and seeing things that I knew were there, but you don't see manifested until today. I mean, even just with the war in Iran and what we did in Venezuela, that technology and what they did and how they, they didn't have to shoot anything. They didn't have to put boots on the ground. They used information technology that is over 50 years old. But so my background came from that. I also worked for a printing press that printed U.S. News Magazine, Time Magazine. And I saw these huge presses where they might have all these tiny little dots of yellow, and then they would layer it with the blue, and they'd layer it with the pink. And,
Right.
So each part of that, and I think that's what we're doing, we're only seeing a part of. It's layer upon layer upon layer till we get this great graphic picture. And that's actually what digitization is. And the enemy has been very busy at wanting and telling and leading us, and we are embracing digitization. We don't realize that digitization is pulling apart the whole. Pulling apart the whole. And so, and we want to see it all here. But I think part of what we're doing especially when we deal with energetics and stuff like that, is we're looking at different parts and putting it together as a whole. But most people, they either see the whole or they see just a fraction of science of digitization. But Yahweh created us as whole beings. He put everything together to hold it together. And the things I'm doing right now to prepare for the Montana retreat, and maybe Sukkot where I'm teaching, is I just saw something new again. Now let me backtrack again. So I have that background. And in early 2004, 5, 6, when Father started revealing to me about linen, and I started writing about linen, you know, a lot of people think linen teaching's new, but I'm going to tell you, it was really new in 2004, 5, and 6, 7. But it didn't start with linen. It started with linen reduces static. And I lived in northwest Montana, where it's dry in the winter and staticky. And every time I got in and out of my vehicle, I would shock myself. And sometimes when I went to the grocery store, I couldn't go down the refrigerated aisle because it would just zap me.
Wow. Okay.
So that's really how I got into linen. But the way I was taught to learn to do things in the early 90s was I take a word and I go from Genesis to Revelation. And I take that word and I take pretty much most every word associated with that word, and I study them all the way back and forth. Well, when you do that, you have a whole different picture. And this is one of the reasons I tell people, you really need to be one-on-one in person with each other, studying and digging, because we're going to spend all this time and energy disagreeing when we're not even looking at the same stuff. We're not even looking at the same information. So anyway, so that, you know, and Father just kept telling me over and over, light, light, light. I'm like, oh, light. Well, linen reflects light, and you can get into the whole study of the tabernacle and carrying the Ark of the Covenant and grounding. You know, we didn't know about those things, but yet you start applying the science to it. You're like, well, that makes good sense, of course. And then the scriptures even tell us, you know, they basically were to wear linen so they wouldn't sweat, because if you have water and you're dealing with the Ark of the Covenant, which, you know, I've been told by different guys, I used to have this piece of paper that I lost, but some will argue, you know, the techie guys, the space guys, they'll go, oh, it was a transformer. Oh, no, it was the battery. Well, here's what I know.
Speaking about linen.
No, I'm talking about
the Ark of the Covenant. Okay.
Okay, so whichever, if you don't handle it properly, right, you're going to get zapped, and your hiney's going to go on the ground, and you're going to die. And even when, was it the Philistines, or whoever it was that took the ark out?
Right.
Well, they ended up, if you dig, they'll call them little mounds, depending on King James or whatever, but they basically were tumors, right?
Yeah, on their bodies.
Right,
yeah.
on their bodies, because that's energetic causing. And of course, in the realm of what I do with energetics, and health coaching and stuff, it's like, that's all, you know, are you having an energy of causing health and wellness to your cells, or are you doing the opposite? You know, and even in weapons and technology with warfare, that's what they're doing. And this is what many people are suffering today, don't even know they're suffering from energy, like their smartphone, there's even their smartphone, or the thing,
the meters, the smart meters.
Smart meters, there you go. Your Wi-Fi. I mean, I went crippled within 3 months of my first 3 months of live radio for Hebrew Nation Radio. You want to know why I figured it out? I had a Wi-Fi underneath my desk, right in front of my knees. It took me years, just until the last few years, and learning more tools with Dr. Monzo and being a Olive Top practitioner. So anyway, so I started into linen. I actually studied Genesis to Revelations about linen. Okay. And it's really more about whenever a father gets ready to elevate, promote his people, they get a new garment, and it's linen. And the wedding garment is linen. But you really have to dig to see that. But here's the thing. So wearing linen for me, it has to go back to this light, okay? We have to understand that we are literally a house of light. Literally. We have positive, negative. We're an image of Elohim. When you take a picture, and you got the negative and you got the positive of the picture, we're that negative of that reflection of that light. We actually have nanocrystals in our blood. So we are literally living stones. So then you start reading going, wow, it wasn't just, is that a metaphor the right word? We literally are a house of light. We literally are a living stone. So now it makes sense. If I'm an energetic being, and, I'll call it a biophoton field because that doesn't freak everybody out. Some people call it an aura, but aura roots back to the word or in Hebrew, which is light, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, really what I'm doing is if I'm wearing 100% cotton or linen or wool, preferably linen or wool, cotton's okay, but I call it neutral. I'm putting a very immediate environment to my energetic body. And if I do that, then I won't be static. If I hydrate, right, then I have this protection. Whereas if you're wearing, nylon and acrylic and all this, your body can't breathe. You have really bad BO because, but hey, they're colorful and they're cheap, right?
So let me ask a question before you go on. I would actually, more than asking a question, I actually want to bring up, you brought up 2 points, and I want to say these are in scripture of us being light, because in Psalms it tells us that the spirit of a man is the lamp of God, searching our inward being. So that's, I think that's Psalms, it may be Proverbs. I have to look it up. And you refer to us as living stones, which First Peter talks about. And I believe, is that where else is that? But it does refer to us as living stones. And
Yeshua told us that.
And it does, and Jesus talks about the light in us. He talks about the light of our eye, and if the light of our eye is good, how good it is, and if it's bad, how, so when you say we are light beings and we are living stones and we are these things, we're defining it differently now with science, but it was there all along in the Bible.
Yes, well, and even what Yeshua said, is there not 12 hours in a day? That gets into a big, debate amongst people, but you have to go back to Genesis. Genesis defines what night is.
Yes.
It's hosek. It's disorder. It's chaos. Light is order. That's one of the meanings of light. So he says, how can darkness walk with light, right? You're either one or the other, but at the same time. So you have to dig deep when you start to read these things on the top, because you're not seeing the whole picture. You're just really not seeing the layers. So when you say dark or night to me, or if you say light, I'm like, okay, light is order, right? It's many other things, but and you take that back to Genesis. So I'm sitting here going, okay, we're literally a living stone. We are literally a light being. We can get into all the science of, we got positive, negative. That's how our heart works. That's the pump, etc. And energy affects our bodies. And here's the one thing I really, people, if you're having problems with this, this is going to be very passionate about this. You better get a grip on it, because the enemy is using it against you all the time. And we actually embrace this, that causes more havoc to us, right? And I believe that the technology that is out there, that is, it's always been there, right? But in the last 50 to 100 years, the enemy and those evil people have been experimenting and using this against us to destroy nations and people and to cause havoc. And I believe that because of that and digitized computerization, etc., which is basically gave us the tools to be able to see what was unseen before. I think Elohim did, Yahweh, he did, it was supposed to be a simple world. You know what I mean? We didn't need to know all these details, but we didn't have all of this technology destroying the cells that are working off of light and energy to destroy our bodies.
So is all technology bad then?
My bottom line is going to be yes in the long run, because
Okay.
that's just a summation. But how do I get there? Because what is technology? It's man or demons and or the combination thereof who gets together and digitizes, tears apart God's wholeness, and says, this is how we're going to use this, and this is how we're going to use that. And instead of the whole, walking in the wholeness as it was created. I long for the day that all of this technology, which a lot of is controlled and directed with satellites, etc., is destroyed. I personally think it's the figs falling on the trees, but the sky. But anyway, but that's my background. And so, I remember in the 70s, the first time I had to send a fax, a facsimile, you took a picture, you put it on this thing that looked like a copy machine, which again, if you even think about that, how does that work?
Yeah.
How does this picture up here go and come out that way? How do I take this picture and send it across the world?
Yeah.
How do you and I connect? How does when I dial a certain phone number, I get you,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
That's digitization. And when we get into energetics, and then we know and understand more that our DNA is actually an antenna that receives and sends information. Well, I was like, wait a minute. So can I pull that apart and digitize it from when I pray? My prayers go up to Yahweh. When they come back, I know that prayer is associated to aroma, which is associated to ruach, which is associated to wind and breath. So all we're doing is we're looking at the digitized layers of those things, right?
So for me, when you say digitize, I'm going, well, that means you're putting data into like electronic form. That's what my working definition is. But you're saying that this means something more than just putting information or data into electronic form.
Well, you have to break or digitize that data down. Right.
Okay.
Just
yeah.
like if I want to put blue on the wall, well, how am I breaking that down? If there's a certain frequency, a certain light that is reflecting, to make that blue. Now, I don't know all the details of the science. I can read it for a few minutes and get it and grasp it and then move on. But yeah, back to your question. I believe it was supposed to be a simple world, and all of that was taking care of that for us.
Right.
But the enemy has been very busy. And of course, we look at, how does it better my life? Well, I don't know about you, but my husband and I have this joke. It's really a complaint, not a joke so much as like, it's so much easier. No, it's not.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, that's the truth is like, I mean, you think about it and I'm like, well, we're doing this because of technology. We're having this podcast because you are not sitting in the same room, obviously by our backgrounds. We're not in the same room. We're states away. And because of, I've got lights on and I've got a microphone and a camera and a computer and landline, and I've got all of these technology driven, energy driven devices helping us do what we're doing. And yet, I promise you, as someone who is a natural wellness practitioner and a business coach, it's technology. We complain about it all the time.
Well, a lot of the
it's so complicated. It does this. It fails.
A lot of health issues we deal with are because of it.
Yeah.
So this is the way I look at it is, Father knew what we were going to be coming into. He knew what the enemy had planned.
Yeah.
And so, yes, we can use technology for good because he created us. I think he wants his bride to know and understand it and apply it. Mm-hmm. I believe he doesn't want us to be sitting ducks, which they're already doing in pockets and places around the world. And to us, when you get into all this stuff, they're directing energy weapons. We're not even talking about the everyday use of, what's the ramifications of a Wi-Fi or a smart meter or radiation from our phone. We're talking about it's in the air. They are dropping toxins on us, not just viruses, but actual poisons in our snow and our rain and our water. And, it used to be just as simple as, my neighbors are doing pharmaceuticals. So when they urinate and it goes down the sewer, it comes back up into my water. And now I got pharmaceuticals and barbiturates in my water. No, it's like if you're breathing, if you're walking in the sunshine, I'm afraid sometimes to go out in snow. That snow don't even look real anymore. I mean, it does look like little tiny balls of styrofoam, right? So you're just like, but I believe that he doesn't want us, because I went through a long period just being mad. Like, when are you going to stop this, Father? When, okay, I'm going to be thankful. I know that you're in control. I know that you're allowing this to happen. But I believe he wants us to understand those layers and start reclaiming it, and that somehow he's going to open our little brains and our heart and our spirit, and he's going to go, this is how you repel or get through this.
Okay.
And I could go into actually, I had a dream years and years ago of digitization before I even knew what it was. Years before that, it was confetti when I was almost dying. So there's just been these things, and I'm like, and I believe in the days to come, because everything's getting worse every single day. And if you were the people in Venezuela and the soldiers who were guarding but were disoriented and had bleeding noses and there was a blackout and you couldn't think, we didn't need to send in troops and hurt civilians with warfare. All we had to use was technology. Come in, disable. They did this in the Gulf War. We have. I used to work with this guy who he was there when it happened, and the soldiers came out of their foxholes and just cried like babies because they emotionally, spiritually, physically caused their bodies to react. So I believe that Father is going to and what we're learning in the process, and why you and I are battling this with other believers so much, is number one, there's a harvest for the New Age witchcraft people who need to know and understand that this is Elohim al-Tav power and energy that was created from him. And number two, Father wants to empower us to be able to know and understand what is happening to us. And as the witnesses go, the witnesses go forth, you can't harm them, right?
Yes. You're talking about from Revelation.
Yeah, you're talking about the two witnesses. And I won't go into that detail. I've got that on YouTube or whatever. But think about when it says that fire comes out of their mouth. Well, if you break that down into Hebrew and you do all the root studies and everything, they're not blowing fire like a dragon. Okay.
Okay.
Voice is light in Hebrew, and you can break it down in the pictograph language. So they have a light or a fire that's intense within their being, that when they speak, there's power. And even on a low level, we know there are certain individuals, when they speak, you listen. Even if you disagree, you're going to listen, because they have an authority in the spirit realm, and they have power, whether it's good or bad. They have that, and it goes forth. And so I believe that this is a tool, and we're in that transitional place of time where Father's showing us. So in this sense, is technology, I do think technology overall is bad, but at the same time, it is. And Father has allowed it, and he wants his people to know and understand, so that we can be able to align ourselves in tune with him, with his spirit, with his word, with his creation, to go, okay, Father, what are the tools? Just like, how did I learn? Let's talk about Hezekiah. And they may or may not understood why that fig paste helped. I think it was probably cancer tumor that he had. But Father revealed to the prophet to go back and, help Hezekiah not die and give him this fig paste, right?
Right.
Well, you just had to line up with, okay, Father, what leaf from the trees or seed or whatever, what is it that we can do and use for healing? Well, now it's more, what can we do or use for healing that may include energetics or understanding? Because really, when you even think about it, if you're using sound, if you're using herbs, if you're using raw fruits and vegetables, if you're using essential oils, if you're using words of life,
Like what people would call positive affirmations.
right,
Yeah.
there's power. It's either positive or negative. It's either bringing light and order, or it's
Right.
bringing chaos and destruction. And that can be done with words. So everything is based on that point of view,
And
from a
we know,
frequency
and
point of
we
view.
know that that has been scientifically, like we know that, we've seen the crystalline structures
Yeah.
in water when certain words were used to say love or hate or
Right.
whatever it
Yeah.
was. So we've
Right.
gotten proofs of what you're telling us.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so, I'm like, there are times when I'm sitting here going, okay, well, we've got all this technology, and that's, like you said, technology can be harming our bodies just because of all of the energy frequencies, things going on. And we don't even realize, some people are super sensitive. I do have
Yes.
both students who have graduated, because I still call them my students, but they've graduated. But I have
Yeah.
students as well as clients and family members who I'm in a situation and I'm going, well, it's not bothering me,
Right.
and yet they are like disabled
Right.
by the frequencies that are
Mhm.
all around us, and
And
so.
that's because their threshold has been so lowered. You
Hmm.
know, um, I'm extremely sensitive, but I have become so much less sensitive in the last couple of years because I've learned some things
Yeah.
about balancing the body with copper and taking unbound iron. Most people have unbound iron, but they may be told they're anemic, but they're not really. It's just they're measuring the blood and not the cells. And if you think about the energy or magnetism of what's going on, and you have shrapnels of reduced uh, bioavailable and non-bioavailable iron in the body,
Hmm.
that energy is pulling and pushing on that shrapnels of iron within your body. So a lot of what we do is we actually work, we measure that energetically, and then we work with the people to change that, because you can get the unbound. Now, a lot of it has to do with diet. A lot of people are eating, reduced and fortified foods. But the reality is, even if you eat really super good, we got to breathe, and we got to drink.
Hmm.
So, but that in and of itself changed my torture in life.
Mm.
So it is possible. And then I can, I even take that and go back to the copper snake, which some people think it's bronze, but you need to dig on that too. That was lifted up over the Israelites. That imprinting and energy, that inverted remedy to that snake bite was done, I believe, through sunlight. And they
Interesting.
also use the sunlight to disperse what happened in 2020 when they released over 20 bacterial balloons over the US. Yeah, there's just layers and layers of it. You're just like, oh. But I just found something recent in Genesis. So I believe, without going, because it's, much easier when you see the pictograph and you see it line by line. But Genesis 1, Elohim av Tav created the heavens and earth. And even that word create is bara, which is like the cutting of a covenant. And I believe is like breaking open the atoms, or whatever you want to call it. Um, but if you understand what Aleph Tav is, it's every energetic, the original energetic formula from Aleph to Tav and everything in between. Aleph being the strong one, plowing through Elohim, all the different Hebrew letters, and I mean energies, because modern Hebrew is modern, it's not the original, but all the way to the Tav, which, is a cross or an X, right? and what did, what was the end? What was the goal? When he said, I'm the olive and the top, he's basically also saying, hey, I'm the first El. I am the strong one. I am the mighty one. And I'm everything in between, all the way to the goal of the destination of my purpose and goal, which is the cross, which is the top. So in Genesis 1, basically, what I see is that is our magnetism, our electromagnetism, that energy of creation. And then in verse 2, I believe it is, so the ruach, the spirit, which also can be wind, aroma, breath, etc., it's going over the waters, and it's vibrating, it's fluttering like a bird if you break it all apart. And so I believe that the olive tav was created or made or created basically all these frequencies, and the water, it was imprinted into the water, and then from there everything was formed, because now it's a different word if you pull it apart in Hebrew, right? Was formed. And then from that, it was, the next verse is light. Understanding that light is order, okay? So, and I just lined these up the other day. I hadn't seen this before. We have, they call it tohu and bohu or whatever. Basically, no form. It says there was no form.
Tohu,
it was void. It was empty. And then it says dark, and it was dark upon the face of the earth. But that, again, that goes back to hosek, which is darkness, which if you break that apart is, chaos. And so when we say dark or night, Lael, and if you go through the rest of that, scripture actually defines what night and day is. And if you tear that apart, that's pretty amazing. Makes a whole lot more sense when Yeshua says it. So basically, I believe, and I was actually talking to Dr. Mons about this the other day, I believe that there was no form, as is there was no electromagnetic, whatever was needed on the earth, and that would be in relation to there was no form. But when the olive tav came, now we have this electromagnetism. And we can see this in demonstrations of how we use magnetism to, what, you ever see those little tiny filings of the little guy and you bend him and move him and you just use a magnet? That's kind of a way of showing that magnetism. You don't even have to touch the metal stand. It just moves. And so anyway, so you have this magnetism, which was no form. Well, now you create this field of electromagnetism, but it's not filled with anything. What are you going to put in there, right? So now we have the vibration or sound that fills that up. And now the void is no longer void, because there's this energetic sound or fluttering within that magnetism. And then it was without order. It was chaotic. So you bring in light, which is order. Now we have that magnetism. We filled the magnetism with the sound vibrations, and now we're saying, okay, we're going to give it order. Now, and then you can also see that in Genesis, it was incoherent. In other words, information wasn't being transmitted correctly, if there was information, and it was chaotic. It was no life, death. Nothing could be sustained. But now you take those three things, sound, light, and magnetism, you bring them all together and you add light. Light puts order to it. And this is exactly what I see when I do the energetic scans.
Okay, I want to pause just a minute and then jump right back to energetic scans, because what I want to be sure that the listeners and viewers are getting and understanding is, when you're talking about looking at these words, you're not just looking at them in English. You're going to the original Hebrew. Some of the Old Testament was Aramaic, but you're going back to the Hebrew and or Aramaic, and in Genesis it's Hebrew, and you're going to what you're calling the pictograph letters,
language, which is where all the old documents are found too.
Right, and exactly, and when we say pictograph, and you say, like Aleph is the strong leader, and because when you look at the picture, it was something that the Hebrew is a tangible, concrete language.
Right.
It's something you can see, touch, taste, hear, smell. It's got to be, it's not this vague,
Right.
ethereal language. And so when you say, I'm going back and I'm taking it apart, and you're looking at not just the word,
Right.
you're looking
The
at
picture.
the letters or the pictographs of each letter in that word, and putting together what they were seeing. So that makes, because when we read it, we don't see all this that you're
No,
talking
and that's
about.
actually what happened with the Tower of Babel, right? And that's what happens is that in Zephaniah, he's going to return a pure language to us,
Yes.
so that we could understand uh, and do those things. So yeah, absolutely. But the pictograph of the olive is the head of a bull, right?
Yes. Right.
And it's also at the head of a month. When you first see that first crescent, depending on what time of the year, it changes positions. But at the very beginning of the year, it looks like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the top of the horn. So that's the head of the year. It's the first. So it means head or first, but it also means the strong, mighty one. If you're in, if you want to believe in, if you want to believe in caveman, which I don't, but if if you want to go back to ancient Israel before we had written, paper, etc., right? You had um, that's a whole other story. The signs and stars and the language in the heavens, but you as a person who had to provide all your own food,
Mm-hmm.
right, through Yahweh's blessing and knowledge and information, you saw the ox as a strong, mighty one that plowed that field,
Mm-hmm.
that carried the burdens of, even if you were nomadic, to travel and carry things, right? So when it's like the old saying, oh, a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Right.
you know 1,000 words. You can get many, many concepts of understanding that are concrete
Mm-hmm.
by looking at that pictograph language.
Right.
And so, so back to like my history, that's actually what I was doing during that time, was pictograph language.
Mm. So
And
I want to
that
ask, I
changed the
don't
way
want to
I
derail.
thought.
I don't want to derail this, but I've been curious. So when you were studying linen and you're going down the grocery store aisles, did you start wearing linen, and
Oh, yes,
were you
absolutely. I had
able
the
to stop,
100% white linen on all the time. Yes.
and the electromagnetic static
Hmm.
electricity decreased? You weren't.
Yes, yes,
Wow.
absolutely.
Okay. I just wanted to put a
Yeah.
little bow on top of that story.
Right. Well, it was really weird. One day, and I was really into the white at the time, just because you can surmise that from scripture. But after many, many years of making my own wardrobe and having someone help me do that, which was a wonderful gift, is, you're going to wear it out after a period of time. Then you
Yeah.
have to and even though I was really like, I only had cotton or linen thread. I only had elk buttons or deer horn buttons or made linen buttons. I remember one time I was, I went back to that grocery store after I had all this. I mean, I had white underwear on, linen underwear, I had linen camisole, I had everything. And I remember standing between the automated door and the cash register. I was on this side, and so the cash register and then the automated door. And I literally could feel and hear, nobody else could, but the energy connecting to the register, connecting through and going through me in this circle.
Wow.
And yeah, and then part of that whole process when I was wrestling with the Lord was white linen. Why does it have to be white? But when he actually taught me um, that white, don't when you look at white, don't think of just white. Think of every
All
color,
the colors. Right.
because it's all of the colors in the whole in unison, not digitized, right? Basically, not reflected and broken apart.
Yeah.
And so I like, oh, and what does the bride do? And one of the words, shesh, is actually also six, I think, if I remember correctly. And what does the bride do on the sixth day? She prepares herself in white linen. That's in Revelation. And again, it's not just the garment, because a whore can wear white linen. But the bride prepares herself and dresses herself, and there's so much more to that. It's the righteousness of Christ in you. It's and then I finally got, after many years of this, I was like, okay, the bride only has one wedding garment. So if I have one white linen garment, I think I'm okay. I don't have to wear the wedding garment every single day. But I remember one time I was getting ready for Sabbath, and I had a crock pot full of spaghetti sauce, and my ladle flipped, and I had red spaghetti sauce on my white linen, right? I almost had a meltdown. And as I'm having this meltdown, the Holy Spirit goes, see, it's like that in your life. Do you know how many places you go and things you see and do, and you don't realize you're getting defiled? Okay, noted. Very noted. Whereas if everything's pure and white, right, and then there's the whole thing about the rainbow covenant. We think, oh, they just looked up in the sky and saw the rainbow. The rainbow's always there, always has been. It's when you take the light and water, or also representations of the Holy Spirit, and you reflect it a certain way, now it's revealed to you what's there. And then when you start getting into the study of the frequencies and the energy of all those different colors in the rainbow, you understand, like, let me simplify. So people don't realize, or the enemy does, because they destroyed it with chemtrails. But at the beginning of the year, when you first plant your seeds, there's normally, or has been in the past, more what we call God or blue light. Well, that frequency of that light helps the seed germinate. Take that away, what happens to the seed? Doesn't germinate much, does it? At the end of the summer, we would have more red frequency light. Mess with that. Guess what happens? Your tomatoes don't ripen. And for any old timers, I ask people about the old timers, like, do you don't remember this? Do you remember in the Farmer's Almanac, they used to sell red, like, look like Christmas tree aprons, red aprons to put around your plants. Why? It was frequency, energy being used for your tomato plants or your strawberry plants or whatever you're putting it on to ripen.
Right.
Because it was resonating with the red.
Yes.
So when I think about the rainbow, I think, oh my gosh, it's everything in the frequency and order that we needed. I don't know how to prove it, but I believe that birds and things that are at higher elevation, I believe the energy, the frequency of those colors are there more than what we need at the ground level.
Okay.
And anyway, all this stuff is messed with. Anyway, so yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that was a nice little rabbit trail. So let's get back to the bioenergetics, and now what you're saying is, okay, we've got all this technology and it's working against us. Even though we're using it to do our work, it's working against us. And so we're feeling the effects. A lot of people, honestly, I would say viruses that were experienced 30, 40, 50 years ago are not as bad as what we're experiencing now. The clients that I had 20 years ago didn't have the chronic complex health issues that they have today. I didn't deal with people as much who had issues at the DNA level. I didn't have those things. It was so much easier 20 years ago to say, if you drink this much water, eat these good healthy fruits and veggies, and supplement with these herbs, you can see your health turn around. And now it's like, it's not that easy. It's just
right.
not.
Yeah, it used to be you had a certain combination of herbs or oils or whatever, and it worked,
Yeah.
And then as the years went by, the more they chemtrailed, the more I corresponded everything, and I went, oh wow. Well, flash forward years later, now I'm like, well, yeah, because most of them aren't even natural. They're man-made nanotechnology and weaponized. Like, we have weaponized lime. We have weaponized tapeworms, and people have it and they don't even know what they're dealing with. We have weaponized fungus and mold.
I'm going to say it right here. I know people are listening and they're going to go, y'all are just a bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists. You're just crazy. This is all conspiracy. But for those who've experienced these things,
Yeah.
and they go and they try to get help, and they go and bless their
Yeah, they're
hearts,
totally crazy.
they go to the medical doctors and they can't
Hmm.
find, this root cause. And there's so many more issues I mean, I'm not saying that we didn't have health issues. That's not what I'm
Right.
saying. I'm saying it's like I seldom see someone today that doesn't have multiple
That's
health
right.
issues all at one time, and getting to, because that's one of the things that I was taught when when I went through training, and as I was an instructor training, the upcoming traditional naturopaths, it was get to the root, find the root cause. Well, you can't hardly find the root cause these days.
Right.
There's so many different things that we're dealing with, and I don't want it to sound like, well, there's no hope, because that's exactly what you're telling us is through what God has provided way back in Genesis, through light,
Right.
sound, and magnetism,
Right.
we can actually restore health to the body.
Right. Well, those are the three things used against us,
Yeah.
and those are the three things that Dr. Monzo and teaches us, shows us all the time. So one of the things I need to do is go back to, it used to be, oh, here's your remnant remedy essential oil, set, and here's the herbs or supplements that I would have. Well, now it's like I spend a lot more of my time going, you need the laser kit, because there's an imprint of the opposite of what you're dealing with, right?
Mm-hmm.
So especially if you're dealing with nanotech, and words that we're not going to say. So, and then there's sound with tuning forks, and there's so that would be the sound, the tuning forks mostly, and then the laser vials, which is you're using light to transfer that information, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then there's sound. Okay, so that's the talent. What am I missing? Oh, the magnetism, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so then there's different tools for that, and we do imprints, and um, so it really helped me to look at the energetic imprints and or even homeopathy, but we use more energetic imprints because it's if it's a weaponized tapeworm, there's a certain energy to convert that or repel that back, right? To get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
So we look at it as software. The instructions and the energetics that's causing us dis-ease is an energetic that is software. So we're either receiving information that's good, or we're receiving a virus,
Mm-hmm.
like a computer virus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And our body is the physical computer.
Mm-hmm.
And a computer with hardware cannot work without software.
Right.
And software cannot work without hardware for the most part. I mean, it's coming or emanating. So it's basically back to Genesis, when the powers and energy of heaven and earth is meeting the heavens is meeting with the earth, and he creates this human being, and he puts the spirit of life and light in our bodies. And so now we're on earth, but we have this connection with Elohim, Aleph Tav, Yeshua, Yahweh, Yahuwah, however you want to say it, Jesus. And he has the ability, and we have the ability to, whether it's in prayer or downloads of discernment, words of knowledge, laying on of hands, which again has to do with the light energy in our bodies, we're sending and receiving information. Even believers who don't have anything to do with any of this, and they think it's all New Age and witchcraft, a lot of them will say, well, yeah, I could feel this electrical thing or something when I got saved, or, I just, I don't know about you, but I think I've endured some really serious physical pain,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know that in the long run, it's worse than any spiritual, emotional pain that I have gone through that was really bad. Because you can't escape that. You know what I mean? You just, it's turmoil within the heart and the soul, and it's pain.
Yeah.
You know, and but the thing is, today we can, just because of digitization, we can measure that pain or that energy in the soul and the emotion. So a lot of people, you know, I'm not one of them, but you know, when I run the scans, I can see, oh, you know, you got some emotional stuff, there's some spiritual stuff, you know. And unless the Father gives me words of knowledge, because that's how I deal with this, I can't even muscle test, okay? It's like, no, your nose is going to do it, or Father's going to give it to me as a download,
Okay.
with wisdom and experience. You're not going to get anything else from me, right? But I have been through years and decades of, I remember when people were muscle testing in the 70s, you know, and that was not really acceptable.
No.
But do you know, and there were a few Christians who did it, and they had to endure a lot of stuff. I'm as an essential oil person only, I was called a witch. You know, it's just like, wow, you know. But these are the same people, like you know, we've discussed. They're using digitized technology. They're not looking for a natural Yahweh-made solution. They go first to a man in Pharaoh's system, is what I call it, in the medical field, which is allopathic medicine. And it's not based on the fact that the body is made to heal itself, if given, you know, if given the right thing, or the wrong thing's taken away. You know, like for instance, when it comes to the EMFs or the Wi-Fi's or whatever, you know, and everybody's threshold's different. So, you know, I was like, I'm the canary. You know, I'm like, there's a tower. There's an Android phone next to me. What do you mean? I'm like, I know it. I feel it. It's causing me pain, right? Whereas someone like my husband's looking at me like, are you crazy? Like, are you kidding me? You know what I'm saying? One of the best things that ever happened is that I moved to Medina, Ohio, because Father gave my husband a dream to move here. Okay? He doesn't get dreams. Okay? And he gets to see the response of how they take care of me, and then he gets to see lots of other people coming in and out with the same issues, the same problems. So now he's like, this is real. I have seen my wife be incapacitated. Now I'm like, what kind of paint can I use on the walls? How do we get, you know, hardwire only? How do we, you know, mitigate for this so that she can sleep at night?
Because you moved to Ohio and you're working with Dr. Monzo, and so that's what he's watching is other people.
Right.
Okay.
It's not just me, right? And so now let me clarify something. I run, you know, I am, in a sense, remnant remedy. That's because there's a remedy for the remnant. Okay. That is my husband and my ministry. And I do health coaching, and I do essential oils, and we do supplements, and we actually do a lot of other things. So sometimes we feed families and orphans and anything else in a believer's thing. We just don't advertise it. We just don't talk about that.
Yeah.
We might house people, whatever. We've hosted Sukkots and Feast of Tabernacle, all kinds of things. But because I'm not into saying, hey, support me and send a donation, and we funded so much out of my husband's paycheck that when I had the opportunity to create Remedy for Essential Oils, I was like, oh, this will help us support our ministry.
Okay.
And it took like 3 or 4 years for it to at least break even.
Yeah.
And now, you know, I have the problem of, we're not really profit, but when we did create a nonprofit, but then you're not allowed to sell all these products through your nonprofit, okay? And my original concept was, wow, I would love to be able to grow to the point where we could support 2 or 3, 4 or 5 other families and couples so they could walk a righteous life, you know, work from home, homeschool, whatever. So anyway, so I moved here because I had a relationship with Dr. Monzo in that he asked me to create the frequency essential oils that are keyed to the Allotab body system. So when you're working with certain body points or certain cycles within the body, he went through and measured what essential oils, what frequency they needed to resonate with those body points and those cycles. So that's how I started with Dr. Monzo, working with Dr. Monzo. But when I realized and seen him and met him in person and saw what he was doing, and because of my issues, I wanted to learn anything and everything he had to teach, basically.
Right.
So I learned how to do the ATB, became an ATB practitioner. Now, that's a hands-on portion of the practice. And I don't do that at the clinic, although sometimes I might help. And I don't do that because I don't see patients coming in to me, all the time. But I do have a couple offices at the clinic. I do quantum aromatherapy, which I have developed because of this work. I also do Quest 4 wellness evaluations, but I do them from our home office in home ministry. Dr. Monzo does it, and his clinic does it, where I have an office. So I work with Dr. Monzo, and I promote him because I just really believe in what he does. Having a background in ancient Hebrew and the understanding, really, that primed me and got me ready for exactly what he's doing with the ATB and the frequencies and the oils. So do I work for Dr. Monzo? No, I don't. I willingly support and promote what he does. I know the man. He has so much integrity. He's a believer. But I do work at the clinic. I am the clinical aromatherapist professionally there at the clinic.
Okay.
So I know it's kind of hard. And then to make matters worse, the lady who started the clinic with Dr. Monzo and as a partner, and also has opened a clinic, her own other clinic in Arizona. Her youngest daughter her oldest child, her daughter married my youngest son, and Dr. Monzo married them. So, and they both work at the clinic. So people are like, which hat am I using? Yeah, and I help when we have the practitioners. I do a tiny little portion of the class when they come in for Dr. Monzo's class, and then a lot of those people are people I knew before, or they become new. So I work with practitioners too to kind of catch the overall picture, bringing all the tools and the scriptures together, and I do the specific aromatherapy with them. So I work with clients, I work with practitioners, I work with Dr. Monzo. And hopefully, in fact, I'm starting back to live radio on the 21st on Wednesdays, and hope to have him on for several events. I think one of the things we want to deal with is exactly what we're talking about today, and the attacks, the accusations, and really overall. And I know you experience the same thing. I pray for those people. I know those people pray for me. I actually wish a lot of them did more praying for us than to attack us. Look at them. Like, I'm totally 100% for homeschooling. My personal opinion is you should put your kids above school. But I would never put that judgment on you. You want to know why? Because Moses was educated in Pharaoh's house. Right. He had a purpose and a plan for Moses. So that is the bottom line. We can talk about Torah and rules and versus Christianity, whatever, but the bottom line, I was just witnessing to a young Christian man the other night. I said, here's the bottom line, because he's asking us questions. I said, what's the most important? Because I don't care if you're Christian, I don't care if you're Hebrew roots, Torah, whatever you want to call it. If you aren't hearing his voice, and you're not following and walking in what he has for you, that's your biggest problem. That's your number one Shema, to listen, hear, and obey. Because there are some things outside of killing and stealing and committing adultery that are specific instructions for you. Right? And I think the worst thing is not to hear from him.
Yeah.
Like, if I don't have that communication, if I'm not hearing from him, I'm kind of lost. I mean, yeah, okay, he gave us this basic outline of rules and things to do. But I'm like, I need your breath. And if you're married and you're happily married, I don't want to be outside of the breath of my husband.
Yeah. And that's really good. We want to make sure that, because being a believer, a Christian, a believer in God, in Jesus, is about relationship. with
Right.
him.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're talking about. And I do really appreciate the point that you brought up about, you know, what is it that you're called to? And, because I was a homeschool mom, and then there was a period where we were like, God was like, put your kids in public school. And they were in public school for 2 years. And that was one of the hardest things for me because I absolutely loved homeschooling and didn't want to do it. But there was a reason and there was a purpose and there was a this and a that. And, I think that's one of those things where what what we're doing in natural health, in energetic health, is we're trying to get back to the roots of all the good that God has for us
Right.
in his system, in his way of doing things. And so people are seeking out that's the thing, is people are going and they're getting some answers, some help, some relief, but not getting healed, not overcoming, just managing their
Right.
symptoms and not getting any better. And what we're looking at in the natural health field now, we're having to go, like you said, beyond the herbs and the oils that
Right.
20, 30 years ago, that was it. That was, and we would see remarkable change in results when we would say, okay,
Well,
this,
and we had natural nature to deal with and natural nature to come with. But now we have all this unnatural, right?
right.
Or isolated stuff. We weren't dealing with we were, but we just it wasn't that bad. We weren't dealing with energetics coming
Yes.
against us, right?
Right.
Wi-Fi's and a cell phone in everybody's hand, and smart meters, and
Right.
so our remedies are different. And I praise Yah that He has opened our eyes and given us godly people to do this, and not just worldly people. And I don't know about you, there's a whole level now in between of natural practitioners
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of people follow, and they got the good skills to make the big money and get out there. And I mean, I just turn my head because I'm waiting. I don't even go out anymore hardly to offer help unless you come to me, because the first thing I'm going to say, if you're paying attention, and some people do, you're saying the exact opposite of that person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, and I'm telling you what I know and what I've learned, and most of the time, if I'm telling it to you, I have experienced it.
Mm.
The vitamin D is an issue like that. Colloidal silver is another issue like that. And it's all because I mean, and I've been there. I'm still there all the time. What do you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
you know and when you have the privilege or the favor to know some things that the average bear doesn't know in this work,
Mm-hmm.
then you want to be able to share that with people. People are suffering. There's certain things that when people do with that, it was all considered great natural health stuff. It's like, those are the first things you need to get rid of. Because I am so blessed to be able to work and see with what Dr. Monzo does.
Mm-hmm.
And I only get to see a tip of it. Like I'm not at the clinic every day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at home some days, 2-3 days a week, working with clients
Mm-hmm.
that are in for health coaching and for wellness exams, by wellness evaluations. But when I'm at the clinic, then I work there with what they're doing, and also always involved in trying to get the information out to help people. And may I just mention, we are going to hopefully do a retreat in
Yeah,
Montana for 3
please
days.
do. So you
And
got
Dr. Monzo has a class planned. So they're two different events, but the same location, back to back.
Mm.
And so if you want to be trained in Top, and a lot of homeschoolers and a lot of believers, they start out going to Dr. Monzo to learn that, just to use for their own family, just like we would have used to have done for herbs or oils. How can I use this for myself, to help myself? How can I use it for my family? I would say maybe 50% or more are actual some kind of practice or practitioner, doctor, massage therapist, people who work on all kinds of modalities. But I would say at least 40% of them probably are just the regular people out there who are like, how can I restore and learn how to stop bleeding with just my hands.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then you get other people in the community who make fun of that and go, oh, I'm using a tourniquet. Really? How is that going to work on your head?
Mm.
You want to tourniquet your neck? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
and why would you be against something so simple?
Right.
You know, I personally want to go slap that helichrysum right on there. It'll stop bleeding in a heartbeat. Or slap cayenne, you know?
Yeah.
But
Well,
hey,
I've
you know,
used
the more a
Kion to
person's
stop
bleeding,
bleeding.
yeah, the more I want to, you know.
Yeah.
But it's so simple. It actually works. And I've seen it work in emergency situations. And I've used it for stroke. I've used it for heart attack. I've used it for shock,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So, and it is all, it's just the body using the positive, negative energy that he created us and how we live, you know. But anyway, so yeah, if anyone's interested in that.
Okay.
And then on Wednesdays with Messianic Lamb Radio, I will be returning, which is the first time. I did a brief stint in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, since 2021, I have not done live radio. And it's because I was dying. I was just trying to stay alive.
Mm.
But during that whole process,
Mm-hmm.
in between, I was learning and applying, learning and applying, learning and applying to where I am today. This is the first time in, even probably I would say 10 years, that I feel strong, like I can move forward because of that crippling that started in 2010 and 11.
Wow.
And, you know, just moving forward, always getting up, but then, you know, and so, yeah, I have a blown knee this week because I went bowling and
Oh no.
they pulled up an old injury. But, you know, hey, I got to snorkel across
Oh,
this
that's right.
thing
You had a
on a cruise
wonderful
last month.
time, didn't
And
you?
it was like, that was a miracle for me to be
Mm.
able to do anything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that it can happen. You know, I've been so bedridden and sore with gout and arthritis and parasites and so many things. I was healed of thyroid. There's just been so much that I've been through.
Mm.
And I don't suffer from those things. My biggest thing really usually is energetics.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned to, you know the signs. What can I do? What can I not do? And I'm here till they take me out. But you know, we've got some believers and people who have done who were big in different radio podcasts, etc. in the last since 2021, and you know, about a handful of them are dead.
Mm.
And last year we lost 3 to 5 of them within just weeks.
Oh my.
And I personally believe a couple of them were taken out energetically. I can't prove it, but I believe that my 4-hour stroke in 2020 was energetic.
Mm.
That's really the last time I did live radio.
Wow.
And I don't think people should move forward with energetics or anything, number one, without knowing the heart of the person behind it, because there are people who do use it wrong,
Mm-hmm.
who do serve a different God. And if you don't understand something biblically, put it on the shelf until you can come back and address it. And, you know, there was a time when I didn't believe essential oils were for emotions.
Mm.
Like, show that to me in scripture, right? It isn't there, right? But now I look and go, oh my gosh, it's everywhere. Do you know what I'm saying? But it's because you don't see those layers underneath.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I learned the pictograph language,
Mm-hmm.
the more I was like, oh. So if people are delving in sacred geometry, you know, or the Venn diagram, that's called evil, but it wasn't evil when I was doing English in school. But, you know, it's like, wait a minute. It's a het in Hebrew. It either divides or unites. It means half. You can say, I want a half shekel. It's a half, you know, shekel. It's like, it's the combination of bringing together separate. It's the center of a cod. We're to be one or a cod with Yeshua, just as you are with your spouse, and as he is with Yahweh. You know, it's like, wait a minute. What's your perspective of that, right? What does that mean to you? Well, first of all, we need to go back to define definition and original intent and purpose and design. Is it perverted? Has it been perverted? And if so, how do we reclaim that? Mm-hmm. And we do need to leave those on a shelf until we understand.
Right.
You know, We don't need to be copying, just like we don't need to be copying the system when we come to homeschool, right? We learn so much more about education. The same thing. I don't need to use rocks and minerals and chakras like they do, right? And they don't know Elohim. They don't know how to apply it to the Creator's rules and His nature.
Mm-hmm.
But Father's showing us how, and we pick it up when He shows us. This is the intention. This is the way it's used. This is, you're giving honor to me. You're taking back a tool that I have actually hidden probably from most of Western Christianity, because they lost the culture. I mean, that goes all back to the book of Hosea. You're going to not even know you're my people. You're not even going to know anything about me, and one of the things I really like to share is, just comes to my mind, is Yeshua. When he was walking through the crowd, right, and the woman went out to touch him. And if you pull those words apart, if you dig,
Mm-hmm.
it says virtue left him.
Right.
Well, it was energy. And the touch, he says, someone touched me. Well, you can pull that down to, it was dunamis power, which we, most Christians, dunamis power is the Holy Spirit, right? It's the power of the Holy Spirit, right? Well, it was dunamis power and an energetic touch that he knew and felt.
Right.
Now we can measure that. Some of us have that discernment, right? We at different places or different times. But that word, just to touch, can come from another root to mean to set on fire. So when you touch someone, your electromagnetism, light energy is a fire. It's just a different word that we use. Just like whenever I see voice in scripture, if I pull that apart in the pictograph language, I know that's the light of the Lord. The trumpet, voice, it's the light, it's the energy. And so to reach out to touch was like to put a fire, and it comes, then we have this word therapeuo, where it comes from, when we're laying on of hands, it's actually a menial servant thing that we're doing. To serve. It's something simple that you can do for people. So anyway, I'll go more detail, because I know that's just throwing it all out without all the stuff underneath to how did you get there? I used to think the same thing, like how do you get there? But then you go, oh, you got this piece of information, you get this piece of information, and it starts putting all those little pixels together, right? Now I see a bigger picture. Right. But if I'm looking at just one layer or two layers of those pixels, oh, that's witchcraft, that's New Age, that's, evil, whatever. Well, no, look at tapestry of what Father's making and building here.
Yeah. So with the, I hate to do this, but we've got to start wrapping it up,
Absolutely.
But, so you're working with, and I didn't mean to say 4 earlier. If I did, that was
no, that's okay. I mean,
but you're working
I do,
with,
but not. I'm not employed by Dr.
Right, yeah, I understand. I knew that and understood that. So if I
But
used
a lot
the
of
word
people
for,
get
I
confused.
apologize. But it was just, it's
No.
more you're working alongside and with him and in doing some of the same, he's got the Aleph Tav body system that he's created. You're working alongside and with him, especially with the essential oils that match and align with the program. And you're seeing your own clients and things like that. Plus, you're helping teach some of it, because you said you're going to be in Montana as well. And that's
when he does the regular on touch class, I do a portion about the oils.
Okay.
And I usually introduce the thing about Genesis, because I just can't help myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then actually the 3-day event, I'm going to be doing Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all focused on the olive tav and essential oils and aromatherapy. Going to aromatherapy spa, prayer, because we're integrating prayer and quantum. We're doing quantum aromatherapy, which is something that I've been able to develop, where we actually test you for your specific essential oils that tell us, and actually, tells me I can get a mini health evaluation just off of what your body resonates with. Are you dealing with a lot of emotional stuff? Are you dealing with mold, fungus, etc.? Are you dealing with pain? Which part of the plant did you pick, right? And we get into what do they call that?
The doctrine of signatures.
Yeah, doctrine of signatures, which
Mm-hmm.
actually, to me is no, it's the Aleph Tav energy, purpose, design, function. So we're going to be doing that. I'm introducing that, and I'm hoping and praying to get a book done on quantum aromatherapy. Now, before I had developed this, I did it with we sat down and we smelled the oils because
Mm-hmm.
this computer right here, the olfactory system,
Mm-hmm.
also resonates, right? So you can resonate with the oils. But what's really cool now is, first of all, it took a lot more time. We went through 80 something oils. It took us about 2 to 3 hours, and then it would take me hours and hours to do things. And now that we don't need that, I just need your DNA, some hair and nails,
Mm-hmm.
and we do 142 oils. And now, like say for instance, if your body resonated with frankincense when you smelled it,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know if it was emotional or physical or spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
But now I can look at the scan and go, oh, you're resonating with frankincense, which represents purity in scripture. And I've created these prayers that I did years ago from a prayer spa on purity, from taking scripture from that when you're focusing on frankincense. But now I can go, oh, it's physical, it's more emotional, it's more spiritual, is how you're resonating with that essential oil. So there's just, and the more we do it, and then I can map it out on the Aleph Tav body system.
Mm-hmm.
I can, let me give you an example. So there was a person whose ribs fell out of place, older person, having structural issues. Clavicle, is that the clavicle? Yeah, clavicle's out of place, and the ribs kind of fell out of place. So did a quantum aromatherapy scan on them, and when I mapped out what their body picked, because now I have each of those essential oils keyed also to the Aleph Tav body points and cycles. I took it and mapped it out on the Aleph Tav body, and sure enough, now did it come out and say, oh, they got ribs out of place or clavicle out of place? No, it did not.
Of course
But
not.
what it did show me was that point and that rib point was energetically congested.
Mm.
Like, wow, we have things like this happen all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like one time we had a gentleman, I forget which oil it was. And when we first did it, like I didn't, I was transferring from one to the other, didn't realize what the quantum aromatherapy would offer me. But I remember this guy, he liked a certain oil, and the practitioner at the time, who we have at the clinic that does most of the wellness evaluations there, he goes, oh, well, he's a Vietnam vet. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, okay. So I said, so you have PTSD? Well, yes, of course. Mm. So if I had just had him smell that,
mm-hmm.
and I didn't know that, and he said he liked it, if it scored high enough, I would, on his likeness scale, I would put it in the blend. But the fact that his body picked it on a quantum evaluation, I can tell that it's more emotional or spiritual for him or physical, and I can go, oh, whether I knew it or didn't know it, PTSD, I am going to make sure that any emotional oils that are on his scale, on his scan, is going to be put into his blend.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want to bring back that resonance there for him. And then one of the things we've found that's really interesting is, and this kind of goes back to the old school that I debunked, but now I have to reconsider. In the old days, in MLM, people, and they still, whenever somebody contacts me, ask a question, I know where they're coming from. If you like an oil, you need it emotionally. Mm-hmm. If you dislike an oil, you need it physically. Well, I found through the years when I was doing, physical, old-fashioned frequency testing, that I didn't find that so much to be true. But the thing is I didn't know, when you tell me, other than your notations, I don't know how you're responding to that at what level, physical, spiritual, emotional. So I kind of debunked that for a long time. But now that we're going back to the quantum aromatherapy, I have found that people have some serious physical issues, like maybe a rash, fungus, especially fungus or mycotoxins, etc. They're going to pick an oil that resonates very high with them that they aren't going to like to smell. And they don't want on their blend because it's going to override.
Right.
And one of those is the essential oil of garlic.
Mm.
And the essential oil, which is actually a rectified oil, is Cade, which smells like smoky barbecue. So many people pick that, and they might even pick it in a physical test as number one, and they might pick it on a quantum test as number one. But they don't really usually want it in their blend. They'll come back and go, I don't like this. I'm like, well, you said you liked it when you smelt it, or your body says you like it.
Mm-hmm.
But so now I just go back and tell people, based on the research we've done over this last year on these, if you don't like the smell, your body really physically needs it. And almost always it's an indication of a specific location on the body.
Mm.
You know, most people don't have a specific location per se. You know, it's overall whatever. But I found that those that their body does like, but then they don't like, it has to do with that physical application.
Mm.
So, you know, if you need Cade in a certain location, then I would definitely put it there. And but overall, we're working towards a blend usually that is overall addressing physical, spiritual, emotional for you.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, so that's what we're doing the quantum. So so Friday, Saturday, and Sunday morning, I'm gonna be doing the retreat. Basically, gonna have, you know, hopefully my friend will be able to show up, and we'll have praise and worship, and we're gonna be going through and praying and looking and learning about quantum aromatherapy and a lot of details about the scriptures, about the Aleph Tav. And then Dr. Monzo, Sunday at noon after lunch, he will start his ATB hands-on practitioner class.
Okay.
So you can attend both of them, but they are separate registrations, and they're at the same location at the Bible camp. I believe it's an Assembly of God camp. We used to actually host Passover, and I would help with the Assembly of God youth camp there in Montana. And so you just fly or drive to Kalispell, it's just north of Kalispell, and it's in a lodge on the river there.
Okay.
So
sounds
yeah.
beautiful. Sounds
Yeah.
beautiful.
We're praying
Okay.
for that.
Well, we're going to have in the show notes, you know, information about the training that
Yes,
you know,
ma'am.
if somebody wants to be involved in that. And we'll have information about Remnant Radio that you're starting again.
Yes.
And by the time this airs, you may already be back on.
Right. And the cool thing about this location is it includes room and board.
Okay.
So you don't have to, you know, the Christian Temple is providing the meals and the lodging.
That's always nice.
Now we do have people who live there locally
Mm-hmm.
who, you know, aren't going to do the lodging because
Okay.
they can just drive.
They can just drive. But if you're interested and you can get to Montana, and that's in May?
Yes, May 8th.
Yeah. Okay. And you can
That's
get to
when it starts.
Montana and you want to be a part of this, it may just be exactly what you need. But we'll have, like I said, we'll have that information in the show notes. So all you have to do is click it. Just, you know, click it, find out more, learn all the details. But Nitza, thank you so much for joining me again today and just kind of taking a deep dive into more about, you know, healing and energetics, and, you know, and how we really don't need to be afraid of what God has created and
Yeah.
what he uses to help us. Because as we've talked, that was one of those things that, you know, we know that, yes, Jesus healed and he laid hands on, and he even reached down and picked up mud and spat in it, you know, so he used different things as well in his healing ministry. And he's given us, God has given us all these beautiful light, sound, magnetism, as well as the herbs and the essential oils, all of these things he's given us for the healing. So thank you for joining me. I
Yes.
really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.